kitchen. Today we're going to be making one of my all-time favorite desserts, which is an apple cinnamon cake. I got this recipe from my mother-in-law. It is so excellent if you have been tasked to bring a dessert to a function. I actually brought it this year as the dessert to our Christmas family dinner because I wanted to get away from like the apple pie, the apple crisp, do something a little different, and it was a big hit this year. So I'm going to show you it. It's one of my favorites, and also I have tried this with various other fruits, not just apple, like strawberry and rhubarb is an example, and it worked just fine. Now, I need to preface, friends, if you're coming from my health and wellness, my bariatric journey side of things, this is not one of those recipes that is geared towards a bariatric person. It is not low sugar. But a big thing that I'm always going to do here is keep things real with you guys, that I'm still a regular person who loves to make regular dishes and I love to feed other people. So sometimes that does not look like all sugar-free, all low-carb items like it would in my day-to-day life. Let's get into it. First, you're gonna need 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I've already measured this out. And I'm gonna add into that 2 teaspoons of baking powder. You need half a teaspoon of baking soda, and as well as a pinch of salt. We're just gonna go ahead and throw that in there. One last item you're gonna need to add in with your dry ingredients is regular granular sugar. You're gonna need about 3/4 of a cup. And I'm on the struggle bus right now. I have no whisks in my home, so we're just gonna use some forks today for this. Now, before you get started today, you're gonna wanna also make sure that you've put on your oven to 320 degrees to preheat. So setting aside our dry ingredients, I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing our wet ingredients. So first we need a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. This is what's gonna keep the cake very moist, which you will see. We're also gonna have to then go in and add in a splash of vanilla. And then next thing we're gonna need to do is go in with 1/2 cup of plain Greek yogurt. So as I mentioned, you're gonna need 1/2 cup of the plain Greek yogurt, and I'm gonna measure mine out, right amount, and we're gonna go ahead and add that in with our vanilla and our vegetable oil. 2 more things you're gonna need to add in with your wet ingredients is 2 large eggs. Now, so because we've got oil in here, I'm actually gonna set it off to the side just for a moment, because if we go and mix it now, some of it's gonna separate with that oil. So I'm gonna wait to do that last before we incorporate everything. So for this recipe, you're gonna need 1 large apple, or I have 2 smallish to medium ones that I'm gonna cut up for this. You need to first go ahead and peel the skin off first, and then you're gonna go ahead and chop it up into small cubes. Now, you may notice these are apples. I'm not a wasteful girl, and these are apples that I have that are quite bruised up and sad looking, but they are perfect for a dessert like this because they're gonna get cooked down anyways, so no point in being wasteful. So now that we have our apples skinless, we're gonna go ahead and chop them. And when I say you're gonna dice them, you're gonna want little chunks about yay big. That is perfect. So I've got a solid 1.5 cups of rough chopped apples. I have a little piece left that I'm gonna eat now. I would say that the type of apple doesn't really matter so much, but if you are someone that loves a more tart, you can go with something like a Granny Smith. These are a Macintosh. Next and best step is we're gonna make our cinnamon crumble topping. So this is gonna be with some brown sugar, butter, and also some cinnamon. So we're gonna go ahead and incorporate and mix those together now. First thing you're gonna go ahead and do is you're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of butter to a bowl, and you're gonna go ahead and melt that in the microwave. Once you have your butter melted, you are gonna add 1/2 cup of brown sugar to the melted butter. And next we're gonna add about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of cinnamon. Then all you're gonna do next is incorporate this all well together. You should get and begin to get kind of a wet, chunky consistency with the butter and the sugar. Now that you've got kind of this thick, chunky paste, that is perfect. You're also gonna just set this to the side. Now we're gonna prep our pans. Now I'm gonna be using 2 6-inch pans to make this, but you could just do a round 8-inch. This is actually a refrigerated butter pack that I am gonna use to just coat the inside. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I unwrap my butter, I just hold these up and then I stick them in the freezer until they meet their fate when I'm baking. So I recommend, if you've never done this, to definitely do this. And pro tip, If you don't want your cake to stick on the inside, we're gonna take this one step further. So if you don't want them to stick, you're gonna go ahead and just put in about a teaspoon of flour, and you are just gonna knock that around the sides till it sticks to all that butter. And you're gonna notice it creates a perfect coating that sticks to the butter and is what is gonna help that cake fall out. And if you've got any extra, just tap that out in your sink. So we've got both of our tins prepped and ready to go, our wet ingredients, and we're gonna mix these all together now before adding them in with our dry. Once you start seeing it all come together and it becomes kind of this light consistency, you are good to go and add it in with your dry ingredients. Now, your wet ingredients does not include the cinnamon topping. We're gonna keep that on the side, but for now, that can wait until we need it. The apples can wait till we need it, and we're gonna go ahead and make our cake batter. And now you can go ahead and start incorporating everything together with your wet and dry before we get these off into our pans. So now you've got a beautiful batter like this. It shouldn't be lumpy, it should kind of be glistening, and when you pass over it, it should look fairly smooth. As you can see, we're good to go. Side, you're gonna go ahead and get your pans. What you're gonna wanna do, and be very careful of, this has to be split into up to 4 portions because we're doing 2. If you're doing just an 8-inch, one of these, all you need to do is split it in half. So what I'm gonna do right now is 1/4 of this is gonna be spread on the bottom, 1/4 of this on the bottom, then we're gonna go ahead, add some apples and crumble. As you can see, we've got our cake layer there. We're gonna go ahead and spread that evenly across the bottom. Got something like this. We're gonna do that times 2. Okay, so the next step is you're gonna wanna take a handful of apples into each, and you're just gonna wanna go ahead and spread these out, and go ahead and take your spatula and push them in. Okay, next, and arguably my favorite part, is going to be this. Same thing, we're gonna do 1/4 of it in each. And this is a little tougher. You're going to need to do just kind of random dollops all over the place, kind of break it up. So as you're gonna see, I have my dollops throughout. All I'm gonna do is take this, and I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of go back and forth on it to not incorporate it too much. You don't wanna play with it too much, but essentially create ribbons throughout. And you're just gonna pass through by pushing it in a little bit, just like that. Now we're going in with our last half, and we're gonna just split that in half. Do one here. Okay, now we've got our final layer, and we're gonna do it all over again. So we're gonna spread it out, apples, crumble. Going in with the apples now, we're just gonna spread those off. We've got the last bit of our cinnamon crumble. So I'm gonna use my finger a little bit as a guide this time to just plop some in. These are now gonna go in the oven for 30 to 35 minutes, just keeping an eye on them. And girl, we're not done with these yet. We still need to put on a glaze. Okay, so the cakes are ready to come out of the oven. I had them on for 30 minutes. I checked them at the 30-minute mark, and they were still a little bit soft on the inside. So we put it on for another 5, and 2 minutes into that, they were ready to go. So let's take them out now. We've got number 1, and we've got number 2. So next thing we're gonna do is we are gonna let these completely cool off, but while we're waiting, let's go ahead and make the glaze. So the glazing does not get any easier than this. You need some icing sugar, and you're gonna need some milk, and you're gonna need a small bowl to whip that up. Now, again, thinking of my friends that are not as tolerant to sugar, this stuff is excellent. Also, their whole line of sugars is excellent. This is the Swerve Ultimate Sugar Replacement Sweetener with naturally sourced ingredients. This is a 0-calorie, taste, bakes, and measures like sugar. This is their icing sugar. And this is what I would use if I was making it just for myself and not for other people. So for the powdered sugar, you're gonna need 1/4 a cup, which is pretty much exactly what I have. So I'm gonna use up the rest. So I'm gonna start with 1 tablespoon of milk here, and then we're gonna see what kind of consistency before we decide whether we're gonna add more or not. And it absolutely was. All you're gonna do is set this off to the side and wait for your cakes to completely cool before you top. Okay friends, we're officially at the last part. We're gonna go ahead and take our cakes, we're gonna get them glazed. So if you're gonna go ahead and bring this to a friend's house, you can go ahead and plate it nicely if you want to. I'm gonna go around and just make sure it's not sticking to the sides at all, but with that little trick that we did earlier with the butter and the flour, you should be just fine. We're gonna flip it. I just need you guys to see all those details and those pockets of the cinnamon crumble. We're now gonna go ahead with our glaze and we're just gonna go ahead and top it. These spoons, by the way, I always have linked for you guys because everyone wants to know where I get these cute little gold spoons, and we've also put them in the dishwasher like more times than I can count, and it's never been a problem. Okay, now that it's all topped, you are really good to go to serve this. I like just cutting it in little pieces. It's great to serve with a side of coffee or tea at the end of your night, but I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I cannot wait to chow down into it. Maybe we should do a little taste test together. Why not? We've got some more of that cinnamon sugar and apple there. It is such a soft cake. It is so delicious. So freaking delicious. And for my friends that might be wondering, Cassandra, what are you doing with that second cake? I'm gonna freeze it. You can freeze the whole thing. It's good in the freezer for a couple of months. You have an event or a dinner, you forgot to make something, you didn't have time to make something, just make sure you double saran wrap it, put it away. It's good to go. And I actually would recommend if you put it away when it's still a little bit warm. I don't know why, but it helps keep the moisture of the cake. So do that, absolutely. Freezing it is a great option.